Absolutely nothing beats windshield time. Welcome back to Dan the Road Trip Guy, a podcast where we have candid conversations about life lessons learned on the road. I'm your host, Bimmer enthusiast and road trip extraordinaire, Dan Neal. And now, on to the show. I have been looking forward to my conversation with today's guest long before I even thought about a podcast. He has literally been a positive influence for my entire life. And I mean my entire life. He is my big brother, 9 years my senior. We didn't have that typical childhood, I guess, where, you're playing with your sibling and playing games and outside and riding bikes together. He left home when I was 9, so we missed out on a lot of that. But we are extremely close today. There's not many weeks that go by that we don't talk several times, or at least text. He's been a source of encouragement for all the years. We share a love of BMWs. I'm guessing he probably introduced me to auto racing at a young age. We have worked together. We have camped together. And I had intended to take a one-day road trip with him, and we just never could work that out. So we're going to go on a virtual trip for this episode. But I will tell you, there are going to probably be multiple parts to this conversation. Our parents died in 2014 and 2015. And it left both of us, I guess, with some unanswered questions about our ancestry. Before we age any further, I wanted to get some answers to some of my questions about my brother. Welcome to the show, a man who will always be my big brother, Scott Neal. Okay, so welcome to the show, Scott.
Thank you, Dan.
Boy, it's just
glad to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. I think long before Dan the Road Trip podcast came into being, I was going to take a road trip with you and ask you lots of questions. So now we're going to do a virtual road trip, and we're going to hit those same questions.
All right. Well, I hope I have some answers for you.
Oh, you're going to have them.
The older I get, the fewer I know for sure.
Well, that's why I want to get to you now, so we don't wait around until I'm 70 or 80 and you're a little bit older.
Yeah,
because
right.
For those who are listening, 9 years separate us. Scott is my big brother. Anyway, been looking forward to having him on the show. And the first thing I like to do, Scott, is I like to give people a couple minutes just to tell my listeners who they are. For you and I this will be fun because we've both been on this racetrack. I like to use a racetrack up in the middle of Ohio called Mid-Ohio. So we're going to take a warm-up lap around the track. And just who is Scott Neal?
Well, yeah. I guess I've been answering that question now for about 70 years. It's in fact, while I was in seminary, I was driving back from Louisville one day, driving back to Lexington, Kentucky from Louisville, Kentucky, and was pondering that question of who am I? And I actually pulled off the side of the road at a rest stop and got out a pad of paper and a pencil and started and I started drawing. So I drew a triangle. I figured what I was doing was I was defining who I was or who I am based upon the roles that I play in the lives of other people. So I put, I was a dad, I was a husband. I started sketching these things out and I put them on a triangle. And then I said, well, I don't quite have enough. You occupied one of those points on the triangle of the personal life as a brother. I think I had son on there, son and brother, family member on there as one of them. So that didn't seem to be enough. So I drew another triangle. Well, and behold, then I had the Star of David. And on the other point, on the other points of the triangle, I had I'm an advisor. I serve as an advisor role. I'm a business owner. I'm a community volunteer. So those 6 points, and I decided that who I am is that space in the middle of those two inverted triangles. So it's where all of those different roles find intersection. And I can't deny any of those kinds of things. So I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm a advisor to clients. I'm a friend. I'm a business owner. I'm a community volunteer. Competes with one of those somewhere along the way. I'm hoping that gets to my essence.
Yeah, I think it does. Having known you for, I didn't really know you for 61 years, I would say you hit that pretty well.
Yeah.
We grew up 9 years apart, for those listening, so I don't really remember a lot of our childhood I do remember your first car. And so I always like to start my show off with, so tell me about your first car.
Yeah.
I remember that car very well. So tell us about that first car.
Maybe you should tell me what you remember. But what I remember is that, our dad bought that car right before I started driving with the intent that he would teach me to drive it. But it was a 63 Chevrolet Impala Super Sport. It was red. We put on a back then vinyl tops were in vogue, and we painted the top. There was a spray on type of paint that you could spray on the top, and it looked like vinyl.
Oh, really? I just thought that was professionally done.
Well, it was professionally done. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We had a body shop to do it, but so anyway, that was so Keystone mag wheels, lots of chrome and polished aluminum on the engine. And Dad would not go for typically a Super Sport had a 409 engine, but he wouldn't. I don't think he would have bought the car for me had it had a 409 in it. A little too powerful.
Yeah.
For a young 16-year-old.
4-speed,
so
right?
It was a 4-speed, 4 on the floor, 4-barrel carburetor, and had a 411 rear end, which meant that it would go from 0 to top speed in about an eighth of a mile. It was a good eighth of a mile car, but it was not going to run much over 80 miles an hour, which is another reason why I think that he bought the car. So he never said any of those things, but I think he was watching out for me.
Yeah, for sure.
In buying that car. But I was proud of it, and he helped me take care of it. Did lots of things to add to it. Interestingly enough, a few years later, I got into college. He decided I didn't need that 63 Chevrolet anymore, and he traded it off. It was still in his name. He could do that. So he traded it off to a 71 Plymouth Sport Fury, and that was my second car.
Which was a pretty cool car too, I remember.
It was a pretty cool car. Yeah.
Did he? Where did he buy that car? Do you recall?
From Kid Motor, from our uncle. Our Uncle Alfred sold both of those cars to him. We knew the previous owner of the 63 Chevrolet, and so we're talking about 1968 here when I got my driver's license.
So it was a relatively new car too then.
It was a relatively new car.
Yeah.
And I was told by somebody who would know recently that if I still had that 63 Chevrolet and it was in good shape, it would probably be worth a whole lot of money.
Yeah, you jumped ahead to one of my things. I usually, when I'm talking to people, I'll be like, and you hung on to that car, right? And most people go, no, I didn't.
There have been several that I wish that I'd held on to, been able to have held on to.
We hung on to the wheels for a while, right? They stayed in the little house, we called it. Yeah.
We did hold on to those and the tires.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The Neal sometimes have trouble getting rid of things, right?
Yeah, I've still got too many parts from cars that I've had in the past.
Yeah, you've driven, we'll talk just cars one more moment. You've driven a lot of BMWs over the years.
Mm-hmm.
We won't dive into too many of those, but is there one of those that's just your favorite that you just enjoy driving? Or did enjoy driving, because a lot of them have gone someplace else.
Yeah. There hasn't been the only one that I've forgotten. I think it was a 91, what BMW calls an E34. E34. That was the only one that I really didn't enjoy, and it was an automatic for one thing, fully automatic. I really bought it for Jennifer to drive, my wife. But I just never did really enjoy that car. But all of the others, I truly enjoyed. The first one that I ever owned was a 71 2002 Ti. That was when I lived in Germany, and that was that was my introduction to BMW. So I have to tell the story of when I headed off to Germany. You were into motorcycles at that time, and you were into I forgot what you were riding at that point, but you were definitely riding a motorcycle. And you said, well, you should check out BMW when you get over there. And I said to you, well, I'd like to have a car, not a motorcycle. And you said, check out BMW. So you're responsible for me signing up for BMWs. So anyway, I found this 2002 Ti, which is a dual side draft carbureted 2002. It was they didn't make many of them. I love that car. And then I got rid of it and got a 74 2002 Turbo, which is one of those cars that if I had today would be worth a whole lot of money.
Yes, for sure.
And so I drove it up and down the Autobahn. But I was bound and determined to ship a United States model. Couldn't bring the Turbo back home with me at that point because it didn't meet federal specifications. But they went to the local BMW dealer there and ordered and through the American PX was able to order a 78 320, which so I was told when I bought it that I should not drive it, or I shouldn't get the engine over 4,000 RPM, which was about 80 miles an hour in high gear for 600 miles. And so I drove it 600 miles on the Autobahn at 4,000 RPM. And then I could kick it up to 4,500 RPM for the next 600 miles. And that's pretty much what I did. That's 90 miles an hour on the Autobahn. When they tore the engine down, had the engine rebuilt at 104,000 miles, when they tore the engine down and rebuilt it, they said it was the cleanest engine that they'd ever taken apart. Attributed that to that break-in exercise that I did on the Autobahn.
Yeah, for sure.
So those are, just I'm reminiscing about those, but probably my most favorite, I would have to say, was the 2011 M3.
A beautiful car.
Yeah, I enjoyed that car immensely, and probably I've had more regret over having sold that car than any other. But it's in good hands with a good friend. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of those. We go, I wish I had that today. But I appreciate you sharing that. I introduced you to BMWs because I lived my life thinking up until a few years ago when you shared that with me that, you were the one who, when I visited you and introduced me to the car. So that was fun. This is a road trip show, and I don't know, do you have an epic road trip that just in your mind, that one of those that you'll just never forget?
Well, if you recall, when we were children, you were a very small child at the time. I was probably, I don't know, I was probably 12. You were probably 3,
sure.
4, 5. We would go to Orlando, Florida on a road trip every Thanksgiving to have Thanksgiving with some of our extended family.
So we went at Thanksgiving. Cousins. Okay.
We went at Thanksgiving.
Oh.
And we would leave on Wednesday morning. I think it was Wednesday morning, and we would be down there. Dad just went nonstop, but Mother's car was a '65 Plymouth Sport Fury. You could sleep in the wheel in the footwell of the back seat.
Yeah, I remember that.
And one of those, and I slept on the back seat, and he would just drive us straight through from Kentucky to Orlando, and we'd have Thanksgiving dinner at Aunt Ole and Uncle Ed's house, and with our cousins, with Dad's cousins. Actually, they were our great aunt and uncle.
Sure.
That was so. Those were pretty epic, and provided some great memories. We'd stay until Sunday and come back home.
Okay. It always felt like we stayed longer, so I'm glad you shared that.
I got me back to school by Monday.
Yeah.
So, but the most epic road trip was probably one that I made with him in the truck when I was in college. We once again, it was to Florida, and he was hauling a load of steel. The steel was covered by a tarp. The change in the temperature between Kentucky and Florida resulted in condensation under the tarp. that covered the steel, which also resulted in the fact that this was cold steel. So it resulted in the steel being covered with a light thing of rust, a light covering of rust. And so he attempted delivery, and this was like 2 days before Christmas.
Mm.
He was covered with rust, and the load was refused by the receiving party down there because it had the rust on it.
Sure.
We didn't know what we were going to do, but he went to Kmart and bought a case of Brillo pads and some oil, and so we took those. So there was about 4 of us, I think, our Uncle Ed and cousin Jerry and Dad and I worked on removing the rust from the steel. These are large steel plates, and so we got all of the rust off of there. But they had already shut down the plant where we were delivering the steel for Christmas.
Mm.
And Dad looked at me and he said, "Your mom is going to shoot me if we're not back home for Christmas."
Mm.
And I said, "Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
She might not go quite that far, but you're not going to be in her good graces." I don't think Dad had ever flown anywhere before, but he called up Southern Airways. He had a car sitting in Atlanta, and he said, "If we can just get to Atlanta, then we can drive home in the car."
Sure. Right.
And I think it was his old El Camino.
59 El Camino, right?
Yeah, 59 El Camino. We booked a flight on Southern Airways, and he and I flew from Orlando to Atlanta. I think we stopped 7 times between Orlando and Atlanta.
Oh, wow.
Every little town in Florida had a Southern Airways airport.
Oh, wow. Huh.
And we made it home for Christmas. He was not as much in the doghouse as he thought he was going to be. But that was epic.
Yeah,
that was quite epic.
That is epic. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that because I didn't know most of that story. I knew a little bit of it. Nothing like riding in the big truck with Dad either.
No. He, that was. I didn't get to do that as much. I don't think I got to do that nearly as much as you did.
Yeah.
All I ever told him that I wanted to do in life was to drive a truck, and he was bound and determined to keep me out of the truck.
Yeah.
I told him I wanted him to teach me how to drive the truck, and sure enough, he said, "Well, I'll tell you what I'll do, son. If you can demonstrate that you can back it in over there on the blind side, meaning that I had to be looking in the right hand mirror to see where I'm backing this thing into the hole. And if you can perfectly back it in over there, then I'll someday teach you how to go forward." So I practiced that. He would stop. He would always park the truck in such a way that it had to be backed into a parking space if he was going to be at home for any period of time. And so he would pitch me the key and say, go over there and back it in. I developed some pretty good backing skills for a tractor trailer. So one day we were in Knoxville, got out on I-75 coming north. He pulled off the side of the interstate, and I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Get over here. You're going to drive this thing." So I gladly obliged and jumped into the driver's seat, headed up I-75 out of Knoxville. We got about a mile up the road, and he said, "Son, this thing rides and drives a whole lot better with all the wheels on the pavement."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was kind of his style.
I think he had the same problem with me. So he's like, there's more road over there on the left if you want to move over a little.
Yeah. So anyway.
He was very patient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, well, I love that. We'll but thinking back, we said early on, you're 9 years older than me. And so do you remember your thoughts when you found out you were having I don't know if you knew you were having a brother or you knew you were just having a sibling back in those days, probably.
You were supposed to be a girl.
Yeah.
I hate to break that to you, but the only names the mother had picked out were girl names.
Oh, that's great. And do you remember any of those names?
Laura Lou was one.
Okay.
Because Laura was her middle name, and Lou was our grandmother's name. So Laura Lou was going to be that was the number one pick.
Okay. Yeah.
She even had some clothes picked out for you to bring you home.
Oh, wow.
And,
Huh.
and little girls' clothes. So,
Yeah.
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 So I was glad. I was very glad that you were a guy.
Yeah. Even though we were 9 years apart, I can't imagine, here you are 9 years old and you got this little boy running around the house, I guess. So,
yeah, I figured out how to carry you around on my hip there. And,
yeah.
uh,
There's a photo album, and I always was under the impression that you took the photographs. You believe Mom took them. I mean, it's an amazing little album of mostly me, and there's some of you and some of Dad, but it's mostly me. And you thought Mom took those, which some of the photos are just phenomenal.
I think they discovered Polaroids back then.
What drew them to cameras, you think? Because, I have friends that are my age, and their parents didn't snap photos like Mom and Dad did, and they both seem to enjoy taking pictures.
Yeah, I really don't know. It might have been that they figured out that that's a good way to avoid being in the picture, to be behind the camera.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah, I really don't know how they got involved in that. But yeah, Dad brought home a Polaroid, and he loved to take pictures of trucks, and so
yeah,
yeah.
So one of the things I remember, well, I don't remember it because I don't know how old I was. And maybe I wasn't even born. I guess I was. Yeah. So we grew up on busy Highway 27, which for those who don't know ran from Michigan to Florida, main road.
Yep.
Traveling into
US
the US
27.
US 27. Mm-hmm. So we grew up right on that road, and I remember it being very busy. All I know is you broke your leg one morning, taking on a car, I think, out in the highway. And so tell me about that, because I just don't know. I don't have any recall of that. How old you were and what were you doing crossing the street? Because Mom wouldn't let me. After that, I wasn't even allowed near the street.
So I was 11 years old.
So I was 2.
11. I was in the 5th grade. It was right at the beginning. It was right the first part of September of the 5th grade. It was a Monday morning. Aunt Artie, I had ridden home from church with Aunt Artie the night before, and for some reason she happened to be driving by, and I had left my Bible in her car. And Aunt Betty was also over at the grocery store. We lived right across the road from the grocery store, and she was there, and she yelled at me and said, "Can I give you a ride to school?" And I said, "Sure." Mm. Aunt Artie had stopped to give me my Bible that I had left in her car.
Okay.
What on earth they were doing out that early in the morning and on a Monday morning, I have no idea.
Yeah, for sure.
So they're sitting in the parking lot over at the grocery store. I looked south, and there was an old truck coming. So I looked north, and there was nothing coming. And so as soon as that old truck got past me, I walked out into the road and walked into the side of the car.
Oh,
that was then traveling south. The old truck had passed, and it was now obscuring my vision to see the car coming.
I see.
And the back bumper just kind of curling around the car kind of caught my right leg, my right tibia, the big bone in the lower part of my leg, was protruding through my blue jeans.
Oh my, okay.
Aunt Artie and Aunt Betty came out and helped me off the road. And I was laying there in the middle of the road, and they came out and got me off to the side.
Oh gosh.
And I still remember the ride to the hospital. Archie Brown was the ambulance driver.
Okay.
He and Mom had pretty good conversation, as I remember, driving up there. But Mom was over in the house, and she was in the kitchen. Somebody ran over and got her, and she came over. And so the three of them were huddled around me, waiting for Archie to get there. And they drove me up to Somerset.
Yeah.
I wore a cast that year. That year I was at home. I had to have a window cut in the cast to dress the wound and to take out the stitches and so forth. And so I couldn't use crutches or couldn't walk around on the cast and like they do these days. But I had the cast up to my hip, full leg cast for
Oh,
3 months, and then I had a up to my knee for the next 3 months. I was in a kind of a growth spurt, and so the small bone did not I guess it's called the fibula was not broken. It kept growing and pulling apart the big the broken bone. It kept pulling apart the place where it was broken, and they kept telling me that we might have to break the little bone to get them both to heal back at the same rate.
Oh, great.
said,
Okay.
I said, oh yeah, wonderful. They didn't have to do that, but that incident or that accident really colored a lot of my life after that, because I remember telling Mother on the way to the hospital, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to play baseball again. Truth be told, I hadn't played any baseball up to that point.
Yeah, right.
I was not very athletic. Anyway, so that was kind of an epic road trip that was before the new road was built, the new US 27. So it was kind of curvy. Ambulances back then were really, they served a dual purpose. They hauled you to the hospital if you were sick or injured in some way, but they also served as the funeral home's hearse. I think it was probably a Cadillac. I'm not for sure about that. But,
did you go to school after that? I mean, did you stay at home or did you go to school? Or?
Oh, I did homeschooling for the first, I don't know, for several weeks. Mother, the teacher, Ms. Kidd, gave Mother all my lessons, and Mother administered my tests and all that sort of thing. I got a B in conduct.
Okay.
Made A's in all the academic subjects, but I got a B in conduct for some reason. I guess walking into the side of a car warranted getting a B in conduct.
Yeah, maybe.
I never did ask Ms. Kidd what was behind that. I don't expect she would remember. But one of the things that did, Mother engaged our cousin Teddy Ball to be my helper at school. I don't know if she paid him or what happened, but anyway, if he volunteered, but he was my right leg. He made sure that I could get in and out of the school and get to the restroom and without a whole lot of problems.
Well, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Teddy and I formed a good relationship at that point.
Thanks for sharing that. Those are those things I have no recollection of because I was very small.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we grew up around some wonderful ladies. One of those, our grandmother, a couple of aunts that just stick out in my mind, and then that's on our dad's side, and then mom's side, of course, had wonderful aunts and uncles, and we were just surrounded by a lot of family growing up in a small town, which is something people don't normally see today or live out. I want to ask you a question about our grandmother because I think you spent more time there probably than I did. I do have great memories of being there and just a wonderful woman. What is one memory of her that just you just never forget? And I know there's a book of them, but
yeah. Well, I don't know how old I was, but so she lived on a farm. She lived 2.5 miles from us. It seemed like a lot further than that to me, but she lived on 40 acres that she bought when she was in 1933 after our grandfather had died in 1929, about 3 months after our dad was born. She bought this farm for, we think, $300 in 1933 and bought some milk cows. And so she did milk the cows, made butter and all that sort of thing. But so I would go down to her house. And our mother was working in the grocery store.
Okay.
At that point. And so I stayed with Grandma just about every day when I was very young. But I remember one day I was out in a field. It was really between the house and the barn. I stuck my foot in a post hole, and I had those little pointed-toed cowboy boots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I stuck my foot in this post hole, got stuck. Gosh, I thought I was going to have to I thought I was just going to live there. I had no idea how I was going to get out of there because I was just stuck.
Was
And
she with you?
no.
No. Okay.
She was back in the house, and
Hmm.
she let me just roam around on the farm, stuck my foot in that post hole. But I screamed and screamed and screamed, and so finally she came looking for me.
Yeah.
She couldn't find me, and she heard me screaming and came. She said, "Well, Scott, all you really need to do is you need to push your foot down into the post hole a little further." And I thought she was crazy. She said, "Push it down, and as you push it down, curl your toes up."
Hmm.
And that's what I did, and it came right out. So it was a life lesson that oftentimes you just have to kind of pause and do the opposite of what you think is called for, and you might come to a better solution than you would if you try to do it the hard way.
Yeah. I look back on her, the things that stick out in my mind is she had no running water when we were growing up. She got it later in life. But she never seemed to complain about anything. I just really never remember her complaining. I just always remember when I would be down there and she'd give me a bath and she'd stick me in a tub in the backyard.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I swear, and I could have just dreamed this, I could swear she had some sort of device that she would put in the water to heat it. Now,
I think you dreamed that.
I think I might have dreamed it. It seemed like a cool thing, right? Let's stick an electric thing in the tub and heat it up, right?
Yeah.
So maybe not. I need to research that and see if that actually existed. But those are the memories I have of her.
Well, when I was younger, I always said, "Grandma, when I grow up, I'm going to build you a bathroom."
Yeah.
And so, I remember when she got quote city water.
Yeah.
But we also had very good water that we drew out of the well.
Yes.
And,
very
I
cold.
got to draw the water every day, our drinking water. But but I don't remember her ever complaining about anything either. And I think it was a function of going through the Depression. She and her grandfather married in 1927, I think it was, and then and she would have been 17 years old at that point in time. And then he hauled her off to Detroit, where our dad was born in 1929. And then 3 months after Dad was born, they traveled back to McCreary County on the train. I always postulate that it was to show off the baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right.
And for whatever reason, he was born in April. He was born on my birthday. I started to say I was born on his birthday. So,
right.
And then so this was in July. Grandma and Dad had traveled back to Detroit and left our grandfather there in McCreary County. The newspaper article said to attend to some business. We don't have a clue as to what kind of business he was attending to.
Right.
I did learn after Grandma's death, and we were going through her effects. Her grandfather actually had a degree from Fugazi Business College in bookkeeping. And I said, well, maybe my accounting skill is genetic. I don't know. So,
yeah, for sure.
On the train back to Detroit from visiting McCreary County, he died in Harrodsburg, Kentucky. Became ill on the train and got off the train and had relatives in Harrodsburg. The Roberts family lived in Harrodsburg. He died at their house. It was the story that I got. We don't know what the cause of death was. We don't know what all was going on there. But our grandmother then was a Depression era widow. And so I always figured that probably had a whole lot to do with her demeanor and the way that she experienced life, because she was a 19-year-old widow with a 3-month-old when all that took place. So, yeah. And so she came back and lived, I suppose, with family that lived there, Aunt Artie, Aunt Velvy, and her brothers and sisters, and her parents were still living at that time. Once again, that close-knit family really held them together. They were the Hamlins. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
traveling down the road here, right, on our virtual road trip. I'm in Cincinnati. You're in Lexington. I have other questions, but I think I'm pulling into the driveway here, and so I'm going to hold those questions until we meet up next time.
Okay.
And the only thing I would say, if people listen to this, which I hope they do, is what's important to me out of this is just getting some stories. And because I told you after our parents died, I had about 101 unanswered questions. You kept telling me to write them down, and I've written a few of them down. But I believe my message or my hope is that people who have family still living will just sit and talk about stories. Good stories, bad stories, whatever those stories might be, because you certainly, after people die, then you begin to go, wow, I wish I had the answer to that question. That's my hope. So
yeah, well, I still have many of those myself. So
yeah,
we'll
keep working at that, and this will be part one of our series. But I've just thoroughly enjoyed finally getting you on the show and us talking about some personal stuff that I never really intended to post on a podcast. This was going to be recordings that I stuck away and held on to. But I appreciate your encouragement over I'm guessing my 61 years. I'm guessing you were encouraging me earlier because the line in A Wonderful Life that always comes to my mind whenever I watch that every year, our family watches it, and it makes me think of you. And it's when Peter Bailey's talking to George and he goes, "You were born older." And I think I've always thought of you as born older. You're 9 years older than me, but your wisdom that you've imparted on me over the years has been very well received.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah.
I like to wrap up, though, my show with you can tell people how to find you, either a website, social media, your favorite charity, whatever you want to share. I just like to open it up.
Well, my firm is D. Scott Neal Incorporated, and the website for the firm is dsneal, dsneal.com. My blog post can be found at dscottneal.com. I was reminded this week that I really need to post more frequently, so I'm going to get back to that. It's mostly financial stuff, a few of life's lessons in there as well. So,
right.
But that's those are the two ways for sure.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'll catch you next time. Okay.
Okay. All right. See you soon.
All right. Bye now. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Dan the Road Trip Guy, and we look forward to having you back again next time. In the meantime, if you want to find me, you can find me on the internet at Danny, D-A-N-N-Y, Neal, Neal.com. Until we meet up again, keep having conversations and keep driving.